And welcome back to The Way of the Wandering Wizard. I am, as always, Robert Andrew Meredith Kennedy, although most folks know me as Bob the Wizard. And I am a pure and open channel for the finest vibrations of divine love and light, made manifest here in service to Gaia and those who travel with her. Oh, excuse me. In my last somewhat amateur videoette, we managed to stop on insurance. And the reason why this happened is because I'm a technically incompetent wizard. I forgot to clear my phone off and I ran out of space on my storage. Which just goes to show we do make it up as we go along. Anyway, as it's a Saturday morning here in the Henge, I thought I would wax lyrical a little more about forest life and fatherhood. And then one quick memoir of a very special user on the training area that I was working on at the time. And then we're back in the hospital bed. Thank you for bearing with me. It's been a slightly longer detour into my life than I was expecting, but I do feel a lot lighter for it. So thank you for listening. Anyway, insurance aside, as I was applying for an insurance claim for the accident to my left leg, I was sent off, told that I was still under treatment, still had my final check and sign off, so they couldn't do anything. Now, one of the joys of having more time at home was that we were with child once again. Our little one was due for November. It was a wonderful summer on the training area. I'll tell a few little tales before I close. But as November the 5th approached, we were getting ready for the arrival of the patter of another set of little feet. I really wanted a 5th of November firework baby. Wow. But as always, the child and the soul have their own agenda and they arrive when they're ready. And to this day, trying to get Beth out of a bath is almost impossible. Once again, our little one was born in the same hospital that I was born in, the same as our sister, the same as so many people in this area. Alas, Auntie Anne had retired. This time, my brother was present as he was working in the NHS in operating theatres. He knew the team, and so it was to his hands that young Bethan was delivered, shouting and screaming, though not quite as loud as her sister. A bit more of a ninja, that one. Well, with two little ones and a busy life, working 7 days or 6.5 days every week, our holidays were holidays down to the farm, down in Cornwall. Joyous, joyous family days, helping with the harvest, helping the father-in-law out, learning a few more skills that were useful for me at work. Everybody was just pitching in. They were just glorious, glorious days. Well, I arrived back to work, had my appointment, and was told that in a year's time when the plates came out, that they would reassess me for my insurance. In the meantime, I was just to carry on walking. My leg was doing quite well, my left leg. Ankle was a little bit stiff, but other than that, I was functioning well. Now, a few more tales of the training area, as well as looking after the military and as well as looking after cadets, was also host to some films. I mean, there have been many films filmed where I worked. The In-Betweeners movie springs to mind. The biggest movie I ever saw filmed there was Centurion, which is an epic film. I highly recommend it. The final scenes of this wonderful film were shot. I'll be honest, when they came round to look, I was very much looking for extras work. But alas, the great big hairy side of the production had been done up in Scotland. I watch the filming now. If anybody's been involved in filming and watching filming while it comes out on the screen, it's amazing. Honestly, I've never seen a bloke ride up on a horse and fall off it so many times in my life. My mission on most films was to try and skulk around in the background, hiding in tree lines, hoping that if I saw the film on the big screen, I'd be able to see myself with litter picker in hand. They either spotted me, cut me out, or I was lost in the fog of film. I said they are wonderful productions. The site, like all of these old sites, was picking up work, tough mudders, you name it, cyclocross, motorcycling, not motorcycling, motocrossing events on push bikes. I mean, all of these events, I had a degree of deconfliction, but I said I consider myself to be a people person and well suited to the job. I mean, there are a few little faux pas that spring to mind, on one occasion being called to a local gentleman's house, and by gentleman I mean proper gentleman, with a big house, to be told that he had a slight problem with the Gurkha infestation in his rhododendrons. On looking out from the window of the glorious oak-lined dining room, he was quite right. There was a large battalion of Gurkhas quite literally camped out in his garden. I wandered over, a bit of deconfliction and pointing on the maps, and yes, that they were carefully surrounding completely the wrong house. Well, they made good. They are fantastic. I love working with Gurkhas. Absolutely some of the finest human beings that I worked with. By the time that they'd redone the beds, any gardener would have been proud of them. I think the old landowner was quite happy that they'd camped in, really. I spent a lot of time, as I've said, involved in the conservation projects, watching wildlife, taking photographs. I've always been a keen photographer. Ever since I was a child at Scouts and Cubs, I started. Dad bit the bug on me, I suppose. At a very young age, he had his box sort of Browning cameras, and he'd give us slideshows of his great adventures in Cyprus. Having gone through wet film, I decided to go digital. Technology was picking up. I had a little bit of money aside, so I traded my old kit in and bought myself some new stuff. I started taking a few pictures, taking them up to the Ashdown teams to have things identified. And I got quite a photo stock. Being on the conservation group, my stock photographs were used in a couple of magazines, and if to say, they're not huge magazines, but it's nice to feel that I've a little bit published. It's also a fantastic way to share some of the experiences. Not everybody has the time to sit and watch a dragonfly slowly emerging over hours as it pumps its wings. I mean, these are moments in life that we often lose. To experience them on the television is just a joy. But to see it happen before your eyes, it's a magical thing. I loved my job. Absolutely loved the area. We had all manner of visitors, the Ancient Tree Society, and again, I walked land and was given another perspective. Strangely, some of the most ancient trees on the site were really quite scrubby things, but they'd grown slow, bonsai'd by their environment. It was as he put it, which I, to this day, just think what an eloquent way of describing an ancient yew tree. The fact that the tree that I'd often sat under and eaten my lunch had been there, Roman legionaries had leant their backs against it, gives you a sense of place, of presence, of being anchored in the land. And for my years there, and the time that I still work there, because I'm still on that site from time to time, it's just a joy. Well, insurance claim progressed. I had an operation, my plates were taken out, and yet again I was carrying children up and down stairs in my teeth like some old mother wolf while I changed nappies again. The kids were growing up nicely. I said, just those joyous days. 2 little ones, close in age. It was just a joy. The good lady would bring them out from time to time for me at work. I can imagine that. working in that kind of an office with your children eating your lunch, landowner quite happy, wandering past, just a sense of community and family. It's a rare thing. It's a rare thing. Well, a few little tales, as I said, as well as the other fames. I have met a few famous people. I think my greatest claim to shame is on having challenged somebody driving around in a Land Rover, who introduced himself in a lovely soft voice as George. I shook his hand. Once I realised he was there officially to look for some locations for a film, we had lots of folk that came through. I had a quick chat, and as he drove away I thought, vaguely familiar, until the production crew turned up behind with, "Have you seen George?" "George who?" And there's a name dropper. "George Clooney." Literally shaken. "George, you'll ever watch this, but my apologies. I live in my own little world out on the forest." But yeah, and there is my claim to fame. There were other minor stars, of course, in productions, but I tended to keep out of the way of the epic rolling film shows. Now, as I've made mention, most of my work was wandering around with a litter picker. Basically a trigger, a long pole and a grabber. Now I became a bit of a dab hand with this. Better fish things out of lakes, saving the major an embarrassment of stripping off to his underpants again. But it just becomes a routine part of your life. Being able to pick up tiny pieces of paper and all the other detritus that bothered me around the site. By now the site was starting to look pretty clean. It was useful for me, because whenever I turned up and somebody would say, "Oh, it was like it when we turned up," so I don't think so, there's a photograph. But like everything, when people see a clear space, they respect that space. They look around. It is, if it's clear when you arrive, it's your crap. So you're responsible for it. So having cleared up all the crap beforehand, making them responsible for their crap was very much a part of my job. Not a bad analogy for life, is it? Once it's cleared, you're responsible for your own crap. Clear it up. Hence these videos. Not that it's crap. Well, anyway, back to the litter picker. Dab hand that I was by now. Years into my trade. At the entrance to our site we had huge bins. I mean, big rolling bins. Now, part of my role was to check through these. Invariably, a few bits of food would be left in them. Now, if you think ration packs are designed to keep a soldier running in the field, imagine what they do to the wildlife. And we had several squirrels with biscuit addictions. The little darlings would chew their way through plastic lids in through the bungs in the bottom of the drain bungs through the bottom of the bins. Anything to get at the sugary snacks that a few squaddies had left behind. Now, one day the bins had been cleared, but as I walked, I could hear this noise. It's a weird noise. It sounded like a drum. It was coming from one of the bins. Carefully, opening the lid with my litter picker, expecting a rat, I flipped the lid open, and there, inside, was Sid the squirrel, doing a wall of death, round and round and round and round. I thought, with the lid open, he'd pick up enough momentum and he'd get out. But I think he may have been running for quite some time, and he'd certainly burnt off what minuscule amounts of sugar he'd managed to acquire inside his bin. So anyway, Sid eventually ends up sitting in the bottom, chattering as only a squirrel can do. I'm being quite tall and dab hand with the litter picker. I'll help him out. So reaching down, expecting to gingerly lift him, I placed my litter picker around his middle, and as soon as I tried to lift him up, I quite literally had, they don't weigh very much, a few ounces of a grey ball of fury. So fighting this squirrel out on the end of the litter picker, I did the sensible thing and ejected him, letting him go on the floor, fully expecting the squirrel to run away. Oh no, bugger came back at me, trying to get up the litter picker. It was like some kind of sword fighting routine from an old Buccaneer film, as eventually, fending the thing off, he arrived in a tree to sit there screaming at me, and he would scream every time I came past those bins. It's a very angry Sid the squirrel. Now, as I said, if you can gather, I hope from my tales and my voice, those years of my life as a young father, working in a job that I absolutely loved, were just the best days. And that was the person that was arriving in the accident. So now I hope in the future episodes you'll start to see the contrast of quite what an event like that can have in any life, let alone a wizard's life. So I'm almost ready to return us all back to my little room over in Pembury Hospital as I awaited my 4th operation on my foot. Now, during the course of those days that I was sitting around in hospital, I was recovering. I had a few visitors. My mother-in-law and my father-in-law finally managed to get some cover for the farm and came up to see me. It just helped with the family. The more folk that I had around me, the more to a degree I felt reassured that they were there. An aunt and uncle, though they're close to us in age, fellow Reiki practitioners and family members from Holland came over, and that was just wonderful. They brought with them a most fantastic book, The Joys of the Beesbosch, their local wildlife area, with the promise that when I was better, I would go over and visit, which indeed we did. And that will be part of nature therapy, a future episode. On the training area, we had a bunch of unusual users, so I've saved not quite the best, but certainly the most influential in my life to last. One of those users was an organisation that did training, and so I will cover my adventures, or early adventures, pre-accident adventures, into role-playing and working on the ground in my next little video at Ground Truth. Thank you for listening, as always, to the witterings and wanderings through my life of an ancient wizard. As I said, it served purpose. It helps me keep my life in context. Helps me put out a few little thoughts. If only the thought for today. We are responsible for our own crap. And once we accept that, the world will be a better place. Nobody's coming to tidy up for us. This is of our making. So, go well. Blessed be. If you can pick up a little bit of rubbish on your journey today, then you'll stop it from washing into the rivers and into the seas. And maybe just those tiny little acts of, it's not my crap, but it's part of our collective problem, might be of service to Gaia. Now, I have woods to go to. Take care, go well, and blessed be. And thank you as always for listening to the witterings of a wandering wizard.